You guys today, DIJONAI Carrington, after clotheslining Sophie Cunningham, running into the locker room, screaming, "That's white privilege!" Then tweeting 8/23, threatening Sophie Cunningham and the Indiana Fever. DIJONAI Carrington now comes out and clarifies what she means when she says white privilege for the Indiana Fever.
So with 2 minutes left in the first quarter, DIJONAI Carrington just slapped the dog shit out of Sophie Cunningham. Sophie pops up. She's obviously upset. DIJONAI says, "Try me." And then look at Stephanie White. Look at her face. Look. It's mad shit. Now, number one, this is obviously a flagrant 2. It just is. By the letter of the law, you got to call a flagrant 2. We all know these refs are not.
That girl needs to be thrown out the league. She's not even a good enough player to be bringing this type of drama. She needs to be thrown out.
Deleted. DJ Carrington thought the internet needed a lesson after being kicked out of a game. Just 2 sentences straight from the locker room. No apology. No explanation. White privilege days later, she's still defending the post, retracting it, clarifying it, deleted, and debating with almost anyone who disagrees. This has become one of the most bizarre responses we've seen from a WNBA player this season. And before we get into the full story, deleted, make sure you stay until the end because the fallout gets even more complicated. If you enjoy these WNBA breakdowns, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second and it helps us keep bringing you these stories. Now, deleted, let's get into what actually happened.
Sophie Cunningham, otherwise known as MAGA Barbie in the WNBA, is a superstar player. She's one of the most famous female athletes in the world because she stood up for women in women's sports, saying only biological women should be allowed to play in the WNBA. And for that, she is literally risking her life. Check this out. This is what happened to Sophie Cunningham last night when she was clotheslined by a filthy, dirty player for Chicago who has a name that I can't pronounce, or maybe I just refuse to do that. That's my right as an American. But this is a player that has attacked Caitlin Clark, gouged her eye out, that has now bloodied the face of Sophie Cunningham, and as soon as she did this, she tweeted white privilege, meaning she's declaring this is a race crime. Now, if a white woman was doing this to black women, it'd be the #1 story in the world, she'd be banned from the league forever. But somehow black women are allowed to get away with this against white women. And it's white women in the league who make themselves a target by simply standing up for traditional values and
Sophie Cunningham has been one of the more vocal supporters of her feverish colleague Caitlin Clark for the whole season, going on record several times to claim that neither the league nor the officials do enough to shield Clark from the physical abuse she endures every night. She has criticized particular performances, individuals, and even stated outright that some teams have discussed trying to teach Clark what the W truly is in their own locker rooms. Talking like that doesn't exactly make you well-liked in the league. Furthermore, Cunningham has never truly concealed the fact that she is aware of it.
Goo! That's assault, brother. You can't do that. What the fuck? Is this just the default if you can't think? Or if you just like don't want to take accountability for your actions? Oh my god, this league, bro, this league. Bro, white privilege while you're wearing a bleach blonde dyed wig. I mean, the fuck? What is privileged about that? You Stone Cold Steve Austin clotheslined her ass. What about that is white privilege? The WNBA stays undefeated. It truly does. They can't get out of their own way.
Deleted. This history matters because it explains why so many people looked at this particular foul and wondered if there was more to it than a difficult basketball play. Deleted. Cunningham had already established herself as one of the players willing to speak openly about how Clark is treated on the court, and now she was the one struck in the face with a forearm hard enough to draw blood. Deleted. The optics of the situation almost spoke for themselves the moment Carrington was ejected, regardless of whether Carrington intended any...
Beyond concerning at this point how far from the plot we have actually gotten. And when I say the plot, I mean the basketball. How far from the game of basketball we have spiraled. When we're talking about the WNBA, you know, we used to joke, it's like, oh, 0 days without drama in the WNBA. This league is living up to it at a rate and a level of concern that we haven't ever had. With all the discussion.
Craziness going on in the WNBA. DIJONAI Carrington tweeted out white privilege from the locker room of a game that she was playing in. Get this, she fouled Sophie Cunningham hard. Sophie Cunningham, obviously a white person, fouled her hard. Flagrant 2, gets ejected, goes to the locker room and tweets out white privilege in the middle of the game. Now here's the kicker to me. A flagrant 2 has to be contact that can lead to an injury that looks excessive. DIJONAI, it was about as excessive as possible. If there was any evidence of there being white privilege, this was not it. What the hell do y'all...
Pleaded. Cunningham isn't the only one who has noticed the tension. When Clark was ranked only the 9th best guard in a league-wide player poll earlier this year, legendary broadcaster Dick Vitale weighed in. Pleaded. He called the result pure jealousy and predicted that players would eventually recognize how much Clark had helped them financially. After the Carrington incident, that comment took on a strange new significance. Once again, pleaded. A player closely associated with Clark and Cunningham was receiving physical punishment. Then, a former teammate openly celebrated the incident, while the head coach appeared to gently defend the aggressor instead of supporting her own player. Pleaded. When you see that pattern repeating, it's hard not to wonder whether Vitale was onto something.
Right across the face, coming down, trying to prevent the layup, but that is just a hard hit. That's definitely going to be upgraded, I think, to a flagrant 2, Ryan.
I think that is going to be a flagrant 2. There is
Get what you fucking deserve.
And just getting her out of the
Lucky
way.
it wasn't a right hook.
Make no mistake about it. Carrington targeted Cunningham. She targeted her because of her political stances. She targeted Cunningham because of the praises that she keeps receiving. She targeted her with a dirty shot that had absolutely nothing to do with basketball. And then after getting ejected, she runs to the locker room to play the fucking victim card. Like she didn't try to just take off Cunningham's head in 4K. Like we all didn't just watch it happen. That is not competition. That is a grown woman swinging on someone who she disagrees with and then screaming racism when she gets held accountable for it. DIJONAI Carrington needs to be held responsible, and I'm not talking about just getting ejected from the game. She
Pleaded. This is what actually happened on the court, because once you watch the play, it's not complicated. On a fast break, Sophie Cunningham was racing down the floor, wide open and heading toward what should have been a simple layup. Pleaded. Instead of contesting the shot, DIJONAI Carrington chased from behind and struck Cunningham in the face and neck with her forearm. Cunningham crashed hard onto the floor. Even though the ball went in, nobody was talking about the basket anymore. Pleaded. Play was stopped and officials with the monitor, they upgraded the call to a flagrant 2, which under WNBA regulations results in an automatic ejection. There was little room for argument. Wind-up, impact, follow-through, high injury risk, pleaded, and a vulnerable player. It was the checklist for a flagrant 2, and this play checked every box.
Like the way Sophie Cunningham came down on her leg, she could have been injured. So they said, yo, get out of here, dog. Get out of here. Then, I don't know if y'all were looking at her lips. She was talking about, try me. Try me. Yo, you already tried Sophie? You got all the samples of Sophie. You talking about try me. What are you talking about? This lady is unhinged right now, man. This is crazy work. And it makes you wonder. It's like, dog, you were the best player for the Sky at this moment. Look how she landed on the leg. Oh, my goodness. Like, you were the best player for the Sky. And you decided to do this? You weren't even thinking about the game. You was thinking about some kind of revenge or something. Somebody sent you on a mission. You were on a mission, dog. I don't know what you had going on here, but DIJONAI, this is unacceptable. Disrespectful, disgusting, and I'm glad they got you up out of there.
Pleaded. Cunningham sprang back up immediately, her face filled with rage. Before teammates and officials could separate them, she stepped directly toward Carrington. Pleaded. It's important to note that the league handles player reactions differently depending on the circumstances. In fact, pleaded. The head of the officiating crew explained after the game that Cunningham was not punished for her reaction because it was considered appropriate given the severity of the impact she had just taken. Pleaded. So even the officials essentially acknowledged that what happened to Cunningham was serious enough to justify her immediate reaction.
Photo from the flagrant 2 on DIJONAI Carrington against Sophie Cunningham, where she proceeded to go into the locker room and tweet white privilege after being thrown out of the game. I'm not going to comment on that situation, but I will say this. This is a flagrant 2. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, don't matter. This is a flagrant. I mean, she clotheslined her. What more do you want? So, this looks very bad. It just shows that the WNBA is nowhere near where they need to be professionally because, again, this is a clothesline. It's flagrant 2.
Pleaded. That's what makes Carrington's later comments so perplexing. Where exactly does race enter the discussion if the officials themselves said the contact was excessive and unnecessary, pleaded, and that Cunningham's reaction to being struck in the face was understandable? Regardless of who committed the foul, the rule remains the same. A player was struck across the head and neck while attempting a shot. The officials reviewed the play, pleaded, upgraded the call, and applied the same standard that every player.
Don't even mention the fact that she said white privilege. That is the story. The story isn't that she got kicked out. It's that she tweeted out white privilege as though because Sophie Cunningham is white, somehow that's why she got kicked out. They go on to defend her, the story, the narrative that she's not a dirty player. She makes plays like this all the time. I put together a little clip of DJ Carrington, who is definitely one of the dirtiest players in the WNBA. I don't know if we can roll it, but she's taken her long fingernails. She's scratched Caitlin Clark's eyes out. She's had multiple instances of chasing people down from behind, trying the same SWAT and smashing them in the head and causing mini fights. She pulled another girl's hair. I don't know if we'll get to that clip in a second when she's falling. Totally dirty play. This is not a skin color thing. She has a history of making dirty plays, and it's fine. The NBA, you can be a rough and tumble league. Now, where this thing gets absolutely bananas is when you start making it into a race and culture war, and the people talking about it are not mentioning 99% of the time that she went back and tweeted white privilege, white privilege.
Pleaded. However, Carrington immediately went to her Threads account and posted *white privilege, tagging the Indiana Fever underneath it instead of simply moving on. At the time, there was no additional explanation. Just those 2 words, pleaded, leaving millions of people to interpret them for themselves. And the timing made the controversy even bigger. Within minutes of being ejected for striking a white player in the face, Carrington posted white privilege while tagging that same team, pleaded. It didn't take long for the sports world to make the connection, and the debate exploded almost immediately.
We are paying attention to what DIJONAI Carrington did to Sophie Cunningham. It was not a race-based decision. And to call that a white privilege-based foul is to completely undermine the term of white privilege and to also completely ignore the rules in basketball. You hit her in the head, you drew blood, you didn't connect with the ball at all whatsoever. So to me, it was just very ignorant and to some degree asinine by DIJONAI Carrington to suggest that that call was based on white privilege. Have we seen examples of white players make that same foul and get away with it? Yes. Have we seen examples of black players make that same foul and get away with it? Yes. There was no white privilege involved in that specific call. DIJONAI, you hit her in the head and you drew blood.
Pleaded. Emmanuel Acho stepped into the debate, and he didn't hold back. He explained why he believed the incident was about basketball rules, not race. Acho emphasized that Carrington struck Cunningham in the head, drew blood, pleaded, and made no contact with the basketball, which is why the foul was upgraded. He pointed out that both white and black players have gotten away with similar fouls before, arguing that race was not a factor in this particular call. Acho went even further, pleaded, describing the situation as stupid and uneducated. Strong words, but they reflected the frustration many commentators and viewers were feeling. What made his breakdown especially interesting was that he didn't simply say Carrington was wrong, pleaded. He focused on how the timing of the post made this a situation so difficult to explain. Players across the league receive heavy fouls regardless of their race. Nobody normally labels those incidents white on white, black on black, or black on white, pleaded. But here, immediately after being ejected for hitting Cunningham, Carrington posted white privilege and tagged the Indiana Fever. That's what made the connection so obvious to so many people. Then Carrington responded directly to Acho, pleaded, making the situation even more complicated. She insisted, I've never once claimed that the assessment of the foul was white privilege. You assume that, pleaded. She challenged him to use critical thinking and argued that she understood the historical meaning of the term well enough not to use it casually. But that still leaves the central question: if the post wasn't about the foul, pleaded, Thence asterisk, what exactly was it about? She tagged the team of the player she had just fouled and posted the phrase moments after leaving the court following the review and ejection. At that point, the timing itself became the story. Deleted. And no explanation about critical thinking can completely erase what millions of viewers saw unfolding in real time.
Act as though you discovered the moon. You can't act as though you are the genius in a room and everybody else is idiotic. What I mean by that is, if you are going to suggest that we should think critically about a statement, white privilege, when you at the Indiana Fever, you didn't give us much to think critically about. You uttered a phrase, white privilege, of which is both incredibly inflammatory and also a very volatile word, but you didn't give us any context. So now we, as the interpreter, since you posted it publicly on Threads for the world to see, we, the interpreter, now have to try to figure out what exactly were you talking about? Well, common sense would deduce that you were talking about fouling a white individual and getting ejected for fouling that white individual. Now, as I said on social media and I will say in real life, if that is not what you were talking about implying, then that's on me. I will stand down and I will stand corrected. But the last thing I must again reiterate, we live in a speaker-oriented country. Speaker-oriented, receiver-oriented. Speaker-oriented country. It is on you, the speaker, to be clear, to be direct, and to be obvious with what you are speaking about. It is not on the receiver, the reader, or the listener.
It was obvious that Akko wasn't buying the walk back either. In his sarcastic social media response, he essentially said, asterisk, fine. If you say the two things weren't connected, I'll stand corrected. But that's exactly where the problem lies. Deleted. After a contentious ejection, you can't post something as loaded as asterisk white privilege, tag the specific team involved, and then be surprised when people connect it to the incident if the message was meant to mean something else. Deleted. It was Carrington's responsibility to make that clear from the beginning, and that's the central issue with this entire controversy. People weren't necessarily inventing a connection. They were interpreting exactly what was placed in front.
Saying this, and I know it's a joke. Love a trans foul. This is essentially celebrating a player getting clobbered. You are on TV. You are. Not these other people online. You are. You were on TV basically saying Caitlin Clark was soft for taking a fist to the neck from Alyssa Thomas. You are. You got opportunities because of this organization. You got opportunities because of the like Caitlin Clark brought on your head. You did. You benefited from it. You joined the Indiana Fever for those benefits. You took those benefits. You became more notorious. And then as soon as you leave, you rejoin the sisterhood. Then it's against Caitlin Clark. And you are celebrating a player getting taken.
Deleted. This is where the narrative becomes even more bizarre, because Carrington wasn't the only one supporting the incident. In response to the foul, Sydney Colson, who played alongside Cunningham on the Fever the previous season, posted that she thought the incident was asterisk fantastic. Think about that for a moment. A former teammate had witnessed Cunningham being struck across the face and neck hard enough to draw blood, yet publicly celebrated what happened rather than expressing concern. That tells you just how polarizing Sophie Cunningham and the entire Fever situation has become within the league. The controversy is no longer coming only from rival supporters. Deleted. Asterisk. It's coming from people who once shared the same locker room.
I don't think that DIJONAI intentionally came out to get her across the neck like she did, but it did happen, and I thought it was the right call. But, you know, one of the things about Nay is that she's going to play her butt off, man. She's going to compete. Nobody's going to go walking in for a layup. And so I don't oppose the hard foul, but I also don't think that she intentionally went for the neck.
Deleted. Even Cunningham's own coach, Stephanie White, didn't exactly defend her player the way you might expect. Afterward, White told reporters that she didn't believe Carrington intentionally went for Cunningham's neck, but she also didn't object to the hard foul itself. She said Carrington was simply competing and that nobody should expect an easy layup against her. That's a strange position to hear from the coach of a player who had just been struck in the face hard enough to draw blood, and there's an even bigger issue here. Cunningham and Clark have become two of the biggest drivers of the WNBA's rise in viewership, ticket sales, and media attention. Networks are adjusting schedules around their games because fans want to watch them. Games that once struggled to fill arenas are now selling out. Yet throughout this season, there have been repeated moments where players and even coaches appear to be working against that momentum rather than protecting it, whether through cheap shots, excessive physicality, or publicly celebrating when one of the league's biggest stars
Has literally been dragged. She's been called every name but a child of God. Coaches have come out and spoken against her. Fans have come out in the name of calling Sophie Cunningham anti-trans and transphobic. It's not far-fetched to say that the league itself in totality does not like Sophie Cunningham. And yet, after intentionally grabbing Sophie Cunningham around her neck and getting ejected for that, DIJONAI runs to Twitter to say the reason why she was ejected was because of the white privilege Sophie Cunningham, a white, straight female, carries in a basically 80% black, almost 90% LGBTQ-led league. Oh yeah, that's where Sophie Cunningham is getting her white privilege, in this WNBA minstrel show of a freaking basketball league. That's where her white privilege is starting to show. DIJONAI Carrington, you're a fucking joke. You went up thinking that you were gonna get the ball. You knew that you weren't anywhere near getting the ball, and so while you were up in the air, you figured this was your chance to grab her, Sophie Cunningham, around her neck and bring her down by her neck.
Leaded. When you really think about it, the dynamic is strange. In several cases, the players who appear most opposed to Clark and Cunningham are also the ones who stand to benefit financially from their impact on the league. Bigger salaries, larger audiences, leaded, bigger television deals. Much of that attention comes from the interest these two players generate, yet some responses around the league seem closer to bitterness than appreciation. White's defense of the player who hit her own teammate, leaded. Colson's celebration of the incident, Carrington's foul and initial post, and her prolonged back and forth with Acho all form part of the same controversy. No matter how many explanations are offered afterward, leaded. The timing of Carrington's original post remains difficult to ignore. She can talk about elite universities and critical thinking all she wants, but the initial post spoke for itself long before the explanation arrived, leaded. Because once millions of people witness something in real time, asterisk post-event explanation.
Have one of your players who commits a clear flagrant 2 and then tweets white privilege right after she goes to the locker room. You can't then cry that this is being talked about in racial terms in a culture. She started that. This is a basketball play. The second you go white privilege, and they are talking about it on these telecasts without mentioning what she tweeted. Oh, they're turning into a culture war, turning into a race war. This is our league. Don't let conservatives or the right hijack it. Your player tweeted white privilege, and it had nothing.
Leaded. The WNBA is now caught in a difficult position. On one side, the league is celebrating its biggest surge in viewership. On the other, leaded. It's dealing with a locker room culture where some players who benefit from that growth appear increasingly opposed to the two personalities driving much of the attention. Carrington received her ejection, leaded. The replay review followed the established process, and the officiating decision was made. But what happened asterisk after the whistle is what continues to fuel this story. The social media post, the retreat to the locker room, the confrontation with Akko, leaded. And the public celebration from a former Fever teammate, those moments aren't disappearing anytime soon, and ultimately they may reveal far more about the current state of the WNBA than any single foul ever could.